Talking Gallery is an example for all Europe.
Well, hello everybody, and thank you for being with us today again. This is so exciting. Well, I'm very excited myself. I have to say that I'm a bit of an intruder. I'm a bit of a trespasser because I'm a professor at the University of Madrid and an occasional curator. So every time I approach gallerists, I do it a bit like as if I was approaching a collector or I was approaching a museum, because what I want from them is goodies for my exhibitions. So this is so fascinating because, of course, I'm into contemporary contemporary art, so it means that I have lots of friends who are gallerists, but I think this open up the field, problems, etc., for me, that I'm an outsider, is very, very useful, so I'm really very excited. Well, I have to say that I'm in charge of the computer, so wish me luck, because I'm the worst being in charge of the computer, and in this table I seem to be the best one with the computer, so as I said, wish me luck, because I have problems with technology all the time. I never thought I would find myself in this kind of very awkward situation, actually. As I said, I'm very interested. Today we are going to cope with a problem that has been sort of, spoken about all the time, the private and the public, which I think, is one of the main problems that is actually discussed when talking about galleries, the idea of galleries versus other institutions such as museums, foundations, etc. And at this table we're going to focus on this private, public, and how private in a way can turn into public or non-profit at some point, which is when a collection turns into something of a foundation, a museum, whatsoever. For very many years I was teaching history of collecting at the University of Madrid, where I'm professor. I teach both at Madrid and New York. And I remember, one of the main issues that we were discussing was how an exhibition turns into, a private exhibition turns into a public collection, private collection into a public collection. And this is exactly what we're going to discuss today. I'm going to be very brief with the introduction. You have all the curricula of the people who are at the table today. So as I said, I'm going to be very brief. I think it would be more interesting if we sort of open the debate as soon as possible. As I said, you have the curriculum. The interesting thing about these four people who are at the table today is that they all are gallerists, and at the same time they all are collectors, of course. And I think they have a very different models of collections, the four of them, okay, and probably turning into different models of foundations. And they are at different stages too, which is going to be very interesting. So as I said, I'll open the discussion to them as soon as possible. Just a brief presentation that they don't need because they're very well known. Well, right next to me is Helga de Alvear, whom I thank because she was the one who convinced me to be here, because I was very reluctant at the beginning, as a matter of fact, because I said, how could I sit and discuss things about galleries? I know nothing about galleries, as a matter of fact. So I thank Helga, because I'm learning a lot about galleries and the problems of galleries from these very passionate discussions we're having at this meeting today. So Helga has a very long career, as we all know, in Spain and outside Spain, actually. She started with a mythical figure in Madrid gallery world, who was Juana Mordó. Just Madrid has changed so much that when you think that, in the late 70s, there weren't hardly any galleries. I think Juana, and no more than Juana. And she was the one who introduced the avant-garde into a city, which was very gloomy, very sad, quite horrid, actually. And I think, this gives an idea of something that is related to the galleries. Sometimes when the public museums, etc., cannot do the work for many different reasons, maybe the private can help with that. And I think this is interesting in this momentum, that we are living, where, very confusing. We don't know exactly where we're going. So probably the models of financing should change, because we're running out of money, quite obviously all around the world, actually. So it's probably an interesting moment to rethink things. So Helga opened up her own gallery in '95, I think. I'm not wrong, Helga. And from the very beginning, she was actually working with video installations and this kind of works of art, and photography, of course. That at that that time in Madrid were actually very daring. Because Madrid art market, even in the 90s, was probably more used to paintings and these kind of things. Only very recently, 2 years ago, maybe less, around 2 years ago, Helga created a foundation with her own name in Cáceres. She has over 4,500 works. I mean, just
2,000, not
2,000. I'm sorry.
Only?
Well,
only.
only, okay. And a very interesting collection. And you know, it's very interesting. Now they have exhibitions, actually. And little by little, it will turn into a kind of a museum. I mean, because the foundation is actually a museum. Luise Faurschou, I do apologize for the pronunciation of her name. She says she was so used that everybody pronounced it in the wrong way that she wouldn't get, angry with me or anything. Founded a Faurschou Galerie in Copenhagen in 1986, I think, I'm not wrong. And ever since she's been working, and I think she was groundbreaking in that respect too, because she moved to Beijing, where, you know, the hot spots is being taken place, as we have been seeing right now. And she's right now not only opening this Asian market, which is so interesting these days, but she's opening a foundation with her name. She's going to tell us a bit more because she's in the process of that. She said yesterday she was very excited because she had found the right place, which is like, I mean, a collector not only has a collection, but then at some point, and this is what could be interesting to discuss, when is the collection ready to find a nice house for the collection? Okay, this is probably one of the things that intrigues me more as an art historian, as a matter of fact. And well, she's pursuing and going through the Faurschou Foundation, and both in Denmark and Beijing. Is that so?
Yes.
So it's interesting again because it has two sides. Paul Maenz or Paul, I'm sorry, I pronounced it the English way, I'm sorry about that, is a so very well-known gallerist, as a matter of fact, with the Maenz Gallery in Cologne. And as a matter of fact, he showed he opened ground for very many important artists like Arte Povera or conceptual art. I mean, he's really one of the first gallerists who was actually pushing that art. And then, of course, the Italian Trasvanguardia, again, he was very ground opening. Then he stopped having a gallery. He was saying before that he's a different case from all cases, but he has a great story about his collection, and well, it was placed in Weimar, if I'm not wrong. And of course, I mean, as I said, you know, the stories are very different and very interesting. So I'll let Paul tell the story, which is a very fascinating story, as a matter of fact. And then finally, Boris, who is Boris Vervoordt. Again, I'm at a table, you know, with Danish and Flemish. It's like it's like a bit of a nightmare, as a matter of fact.
You did very well.
I do apologize for that. He has a gallery again in Antwerp, but he lives on the plane all the time because he works overseas a lot too. And he's founding. He has found a foundation, as a matter of fact. And you know, the idea about this gallery and foundation is that he's pretty much in fact, he's a member of the Chamber of Belgian Antiquarians, and this is important, you know, because I think it's something very peculiar about his collection. You know, the idea of very contemporary. His gallery is contemporary, but then his contemporary and classical art, which is again very interesting in that respect. So, as I said, you know, it's very different approaches, as a matter of fact. And I would like to open maybe, well, I always have, that's something that intrigues me a lot as an art historian. We were discussing yesterday with Anne that art historians, professors usually, and especially people from museums and institutions, are very rarely collectors for some reason. We couldn't understand why. But, I mean, I suppose if you work directly with works of art and you're a gallery director, owner, whatsoever, you're in such very close contact with artists and works of art that at the beginning you need to have the works closer to you, and maybe selling something is saying a goodbye to a piece you very much like. But I will open the presentations and then we come back to the questions. I asked them, I thought it may be interesting if they brought some PowerPoint, because to show a bit some of the collections. I know that maybe put them in a difficult position because they had to choose between their babies, and that was probably, I know in Helga's case, was very difficult, but maybe I will pass the word to them so that they can, and then we'll go back to the questions. So thank you so much. Helga, would you like to start in Spanish or English?
Puedo hablar 4 idiomas, pero prefiero hablar español hoy.
Okay.
Es más fácil. ¿Es posible?
Sure.
Gracias. Bueno, esto es lo primero que os voy a contar, que va en contra de todo lo que ha pasado aquí estos días. Porque esta pieza de Ai Weiwei, os podéis imaginar que no es fácil de transportar. Entonces, hace como 4 años, Mary Boone me llamó por teléfono y me dijo: Helga, tengo una pieza en la galería que la tienes que ver, porque yo sé que conoces bien el trabajo de Ai Weiwei y además yo quiero que esté en una colección donde sé que nunca más se va a ir al mercado. He dicho: mira, Mary, yo no tengo dinero para comprar esto, porque claro, soy una coleccionista particular, a mí no me apoya ninguna empresa ni nadie. Bueno, me dan dinero, pero yo, entonces, soy la loca de la familia. Y entonces me mandó toda la información. Y claro, me enamoré. Y dije, pero yo no puedo pagarlo. Me dice, te voy a hacer un 50%. He dicho, no puedo pagar el viaje, porque estos son 30.000 cositas de cristal rojas. Y cuando me mandó el montaje, la pieza tiene 6 metros de altura y 7 de largo. Y claro, necesita un espacio impresionante. Dice, te lo mando gratis. La suerte que tiene uno de vez en cuando. 13 containers vinieron a Madrid. Solamente donde lo guardo, ya os podéis imaginar que ya ocupa un sitio. Y luego conocí a Ai Weiwei. Y me dijo, Helga, por favor, cuando lo montas, yo quiero estar presente y quiero hacerlo. Y ahora, pues estoy rezando. A ver si llega el día que terminan el edificio que están construyendo en Cáceres para que podamos mandar. Mandé los arquitectos que están dando clases en Princeton y los mandé a Mary Boone. Iros a verlo. Y me mandaron una foto con el móvil. Mira cómo somos de pequeños, lo que es esto. Y dije, pues, tenéis que hacer el proyecto de tal forma que esta pieza va a ser el símbolo. Y este es, para Ai Weiwei, la caída del comunismo chino. Y claro, tenía que salir rápidamente de América porque ya empezaba a tener problemas y los va a tener siempre porque no sabe callarse. Pero si no tenemos gente así en el mundo, es peor todavía. Así que esta clase de gente, también los coleccionistas, los podemos apoyar. Entonces yo tengo muchas cosas en la galería, como por ejemplo, de Thomas Hirschhorn. Tengo una pieza que es un homenaje a Hitler, que es el Holzfäller, ¿sabéis lo que es? El que corta la madera, y que era el tío que luchaba por la libertad en Suiza tremendamente. Esa pieza se expuso en el Museo Wolfsburg, que para mí es el sumo de hacer algo de una ciudad, porque la ciudad de Wolfsburg era la ciudad de Volkswagen. Nadie sabía ni dónde estaba. Hoy día en el mundo, todo el mundo en el mundo del arte sabe dónde está Wolfsburg, porque este museo es importante. Y eso yo creo que es realmente el trabajo que tenemos que hacer los galeristas. Hacer una cosa importante. Es decir, que puede ser con una sola pieza o con, no sé, en Wolfsburg estaba Volkswagen y mira cómo está ahora. Y para mí esos han sido siempre el símbolo donde quiero llegar. Por eso estoy con una suerte grandísima que he conseguido que en Cáceres, que es una ciudad pequeña en sudwest, en el casi...
It's very close to Portugal.
Yeah.
Okay, it's very close to Portugal, let's say, just to place you.
It's a middle-aged town. Wonderful middle-aged town. Y ellos, por fin, ya está la primera parte ya está construida, ya está arreglada, una casa antigua, y ahora falta construir otros 7.000 metros, un edificio nuevo, con unos arquitectos que son unos amores, que me hacen unos precios que tienen que ayudarme, porque todo el mundo, yo estoy siempre así, por favor, pero lo vamos a conseguir, porque yo creo que España lo merece. Y bueno, sigue, porque si no, me entusiasmo aquí. Bueno, esto es una pieza de Plinky Palermo, y claro, una suerte loca de poder encontrar en los 80, a principios de los 80, en Köln, la Galería Löhl, que es la que tenía siempre los Plinky Palermo, y podía comprar. Esto es un trabajo para la pared, para hacerlo en una pared. Y claro, eso en España nadie sabía quién era Plinky Palermo en ese momento. Hoy día todo el mundo lo sabe y yo estoy muy contenta que tenemos una pieza en España de Plinky Palermo. Sigue. Bueno, Araki no lo tengo que explicar. Yo creo que Araki es un gran amor mío y me gusta mucho. Baldessari, gracias, Víctor. Gracias lo que habéis hablado el otro día. Hay que ir a las ferias, hay que ver las obras, hay que verlas. Se puede comprar por internet, como lo habéis visto. Yo no he ido a Londres a comprar el Ai Weiwei, pero estas cosas hay que ir a verlas. Un coleccionista se enamora en una feria y no a través de internet. Si conoces un artista, está tirado, lo dices que quieres una pieza como en la Dogana, que tienen unos Ronnie Juan fantásticos, ahora mismo la exposición en Venecia, no tienes más que ir a, no sé, la exposición está en Haus Alvear o donde sea, y los pides y los compras. Pero eso no es igual. Tienes que verlo, tienes que enamorarte. Un coleccionista de verdad no es ¿cómo se llaman estos que compran para grandes fortunas? ¿Cómo se llama?
¿Asesor?
Asesor, claro. Los asesores son importantes, yo no digo, y eso es para demostrar, porque claro, yo he vuelto de Venecia así, y me he encontrado con el director del Reina Sofía, con Manolo Borja, y he dicho, Manolo, yo no tengo nada, todo es así. Y me dijo, eso es una demostración de poder. Las grandes firmas necesitan demostrar su poder. Pero tú eres un coleccionista y nosotros te adoramos todos porque tú coleccionas. Y yo tengo mucho papel. Me gusta muchísimo comprar papel. Y si nos fuéramos a las ferias para ver, a lo mejor tengo una pieza grande de alguien y de repente veo ese Lorenz Wiener de papel y lo tengo que comprar. Pero eso no se ve en internet. Eso es imposible. Yo estoy a favor y gracias a Dios ahora en Madrid tenemos un director de arte que sabe de arte y yo creo que hemos hecho muy bien en luchar hace 2 años y pusimos un gran no, que no queríamos seguir la feria. Era contra IFEMA, no era contra Lourdes, era contra IFEMA. Y hemos luchado con eso que se ha hablado antes. Es decir, que realmente también las presidentes de las ferias se tienen que dar cuenta que una feria de arte es muy diferente a una feria de informática o de coches o de lo que sea. Es diferente. Y yo creo que lo hemos enseñado todos. Les pusimos el no grandísimo de Santiago Sierra ahí. Bueno, Juan Muñoz yo creo que no tengo que explicar mucho. Lo conoce, ya lo conoce todo el mundo, ¿no? Tengo varias piezas y es un gran artista. Bueno, esto es de Stan Douglas y eso es otra cosa que el otro día habéis dicho que no se podían vender los vídeos. Pues claro, en una casa particular tienes que comprar un vídeo de un one screen o que lo puedes ver en la televisión. Y hay coleccionistas que hacen eso y tienen una colección de eso. Pero claro, esta pantalla, pues es que eso, pues no, eso es ya para una fundación o para un museo, para lo que sea, pero también lo puedes prestar. Es decir, que no todo es necesario que lo veas todos los días. Es decir, a mí es que me gusta muchísimo y lo compré. Lo vi en el Kunsthaus en Bregenz. Bueno, esto ya se me ha olvidado el artista, ¿cómo se llama?
Francis Alice.
Francis Alice. Pues de Francis también tengo mucho papel y encontré esto y me pareció que era tan importante para España que esta pieza estuviera allí, porque es como Hércules, ¿no? Que está dando con la bota un golpe a Marruecos y está separando el estrecho de Gibraltar. Me pareció muy importante. Yo no quiero dar una clase aquí solamente yo como coleccionista veo algunas cosas. Y este es millares para que no me digáis que no tengo arte español, vamos, que tengo mucho arte español de los años 50, 60, 70, que es lo que tenía Juana Mordó, y claro, pues evidentemente me tuve que enamorar primero de esto y después ya pasé fuera. Bueno, eso fue una exposición que hice en Madrid en los años 90 y no vendí nada. Muchas cosas. Como galerista lo sabéis todos, que no vendéis nada. Y luego dice, bueno, pues me quedo yo con 2 o 3 piezas y ya está. Y así se hacen las colecciones de los galeristas. Y es muy difícil ser galerista y coleccionista. Muy. Porque al principio piensan que tú quieres comprar para luego venderlo. En las ferias me ha costado muchísimo. En Basel, en Köln, en Berlín después. No se fían de ti hasta que ya se han dado cuenta que, bueno, que parece que tiene una colección importante, pero el principio es muy difícil. Dicen, mira esta. Y claro, además tenemos una ventaja, si somos galeristas. Y eso supongo que lo sabéis. En el montaje somos los primeros. Esa ventaja sí que la tenemos. Es decir, que te tienes que tragar la feria el día del montaje y encuentras unas piezas buenas, porque luego te puede pasar eso hasta que llegas y que realmente te venden una pieza importante, porque primero pues están los grandes, importantes coleccionistas, que está todo reservado. A mí me ha pasado. En Londres, en una galería, quería comprar un Kusama y me dijo uno, está todo reservado para museos. Le dije, pues mira, nunca más.
I'm sorry, Helga, to interrupt you, but there is not a green card, but a red card.
Oh, well, okay, that's enough. Show the rest quickly. I won't say anything. This is Fernando Price, who is just now at the Biennale in Lyon. Candida Höfer, Villa Stuck. Pepe Spaliou. Martha Clark. Thomas Struth. No, Thomas Schütte. It's Juan Uslet. Nam June Pai. The first exhibition I made after the death of Juana was with Nam June Pai. And they came from the Reina Sofia and said, what do you think about that? Do you think really that we will buy something like that? I said, no.
Who was the director? Don't say.
They didn't buy by them.
Okay.
bueno, Rachel Whitehead, eso es Etrusha, es, ¿cómo se llama?
Allí.
Así, Abaí. Bueno, tengo un montón de Abaí, soy una fan de Abaí.
Ay, perdón. Bueno.
Bueno,
Okay.
gracias.
Well, thank you so much, Helga. Okay, just 1 second. Okay. Aquí. No, pero está aquí. La que buscamos es esta, ¿no?
Ich bin nach Fantan antreten.
Sí. Sí, esa es la de Pau.
No. That's mine.
It is
I'm
an
sorry.
endless story. It is an endless story.
It isn't. It's a
Esa de
way of
Boris,
life.
esta. Talking galleries. Okay. No. Y la pausa está aquí arriba. No, en esta. Okay. Okay, thank you so very much, Helga. I think, it has been very interesting because you pointed out something which is, I think, at the core of the discussion, is how can you be a gallerist and a collector at the same time? And do other gallerists trust a gallery who becomes a collector, or it turns into a different category that is not, that is more conflictive, but the conflict, being both things at the same time. And now Paul is going to, Paul, I'm sorry, I always say, it's like people who say Paul Klee, that I get on my nerves. I'm sorry about that. Paul, thank you so much for your presentation.
Yeah, thank you for inviting me. I won't disappoint you too badly, because it's really, what I tell you is the story of my life, but I'm not talking about me as Paul Maenz, but as someone who has a certain function within this field that we've been discussing here since yesterday, which already exhausted me this morning again, because it seemed that gallerists to a certain extent see themselves as victims, which they in a way are, slaves of the artist, victims of the collector at the same time. At this point, really, under this enormous megastructure that we've been discussing this morning, and I slipped out early enough because I stopped my gallery activity in 1990. That was about the turning point. The turning point 1980 was when art became a public issue. In 1990 you had the superstructure, but don't forget what I'm telling you now was before the age of fax machines, before the age of internet, before iPhones. I mean, all these things that rule the world today, that didn't exist. So it's really like a kind of handcrafted career. So let me start with this thing, because it refers to the subject best. In 1962, I was 22 years old. Before you start counting, I'm 72 now. In 1962, I made my driving license and went to buy my first used car, an old Volkswagen. And on the way to that dealer, I stopped by a gallery, and I had the 2,500 marks, which is like 1,200 euros, in my pocket. That was all the money I had. Instead of the car, I walked out with this Piero Manzoni, which I still have. And for my 22 years situation, it was a very exciting thing. I put it in the train because I had to go there by train and wanted to come back by car, and carefully have been watching over it ever since, and now it's in my living room. But anyway, it was the first serious acquisition, and then of course came a couple of other activities. I was curating this and that in Frankfurt, and in 1970, can we have the next picture?
Yeah. Okay.
No, there's one before. That's too far. Yeah.
Okay.
That in 1970, I started my gallery in Cologne. In Cologne because you could see that Cologne would develop into a marketplace. Düsseldorf was a very creative city because you had the academy, you had Joseph Beuys, you had these very talented students. Many of them are famous these days. Cologne was kind of a merchant city ever since the Middle Ages, because there the boats on the Rhine had to stop. The people or the dealers in Cologne, the merchants, had the first right to choose what they wanted to buy and to sell, and then the ships could pass on. So there was the tradition of dealing, and starting with an art that, as Helga would say, nobody wanted. At least you wanted to have a platform where there was a certain climate, historically speaking. So also Cologne, as we heard this morning, was the first place where an art fair happened. In Cologne, the art fairs were invented, good or bad, but that's what happened in 1968, I think. So I give you a quick rundown, because it leads to the collection, because what I own as art really is the residue, that's the result of the gallery work to most extent. The first show was Hans Haacke. That's how the gallery opened. And then, of course, we were in the conceptual area. You had Joseph Gossuth, Robert Barry, Art and Language, Hanne Darboven, Daniel Buren, etc. And parallel to this, there was the Arte Povera situation. Even if we don't like those labels, they help, with Giulio Paolini, Pinona, Anselmo, Luciano Fabro, etc. And then we had the feeling that towards the second half of the 1970s, there was a certain academismus in the situation. I mean, if we did a show in February of Daniel Buren, whom I adore still, we know we would get stripes. If we do Hanne Darboven in March, we would get numbers. And the next year it would be the same. I mean, somehow the message was understood, but it would not carry the life and the fire of a gallery which claimed to be eine Galerie für die internationale Avantgarde. You know, international in those days meant Europe, and Europe meant Germany, a little bit France, Italy, and not very much more, some English, plus New York, not even America. That has changed, as we all know. So then there was something that really intrigued me when I went to Italy. Where's my, oh, here we continue. When I went to Italy, I kept seeing things which I really didn't understand, and they went against everything that I believed in. They were figurative, they were painted, they were not part of this kind of progression that we were used to. I mean, one ism after the other, because, I mean, the minimalist had to kill somebody, the conceptualist had to kill everybody, and all of a sudden there was something like what then Bonito Oliva called Transavanguardia. That word didn't exist in the beginning, because there was just strange works by Francesco Clemente, strange by Sandro Chias, strange ones by Enzo Cucchi. And of this artist, Chia, who, believe me, was an extraordinary painter in those days, this painter that I had never seen before and had not met even in Rome, I went back in my car with 19 small paintings. Then when I arrived, my friend Gert de Vries, with whom I was doing the gallery work, said, "But you don't want to show that?" I said, "Yeah, we show that." And so we gave to these artists, which I just mentioned, the first shows outside Italy. Then, of course, quickly after, we had the so-called wild painters from Germany, people like Dokupil, whom you know in Spain, and then Albert Oehlen and Fetting, etc. And it was a short-lived but very intense situation. And the situation was shared exactly by the real straight galleries like Art and Project in Amsterdam, Yvon Lambert in Paris. It was shared by Anthony Daffé. It was shared by Gianenzo Spirone, because it's so strange that all these people who are legends today kind of try to cut that out of their career, at least out of the art historical past, which I think is not right. And then around 1980, there was also a big bang, because, as I mentioned before, the idea of the avant-garde was over. I know this is really very short, what I say, and it's more complex, but we had a postmodernist situation. And the gallery program, my gallery program, like others, really reflected that, because you had a patchwork of artistic concepts, and one was equally standing next to the other. Like a critic said, now the artists don't seem to be against something. They are somewhere else. you know, and that's very much, and that's what you could see in the gallery program. I mean, you would have the artists that I mentioned, the conceptualists, the arte pauvre people. You had the Transvanguardia, and since the idea of the gallery was always to follow the art and the artist, then we had Anish Kapoor, always the first shows and always the only gallery in Germany for these people. Keith Haring had the first show in Germany. In 1984, Anselm Kiefer, we had been representing since 10 years, have been until 1990 when the gallery closed, or Julian Opie. And of course, it was also the time when artists became stars and exhibitions became events. Like Anselm Kiefer, he would fly in with a helicopter for his opening and expect the limousine at the airport we sent. And in the first years, we had like 16 people average for an opening. The last show in 1990, we had a bodyguard standing in front of the gallery, letting in always 200, because we were afraid of the work to be damaged. And that shows what different. And so, and then, do I see the green card already? No? Oh, yeah?
No, green,
Okay.
still green.
Green, okay, green.
It's a red, the dangerous one is a red.
Okay, so quick. Around 1980, the wall in Berlin came down and Germany was united, and during my lifetime, we had the first capital city. That was not the reason, but it was a good moment for me to move on.
Next one?
Yeah, maybe I forgot about the pictures, but you can see a little bit. This is that's the gallery, and that, for instance, would be a show by Hanne Darboven. You see, I take that as a symbol for the. It was called Existence, very true. And so then you would have, next one, you would have Giulio Paolini, who I still admire. I think it's one of the greatest living artists, at least in Italy, if not far beyond. Then came the situation with the Italians, and in the lower right corner, you see this emerging situation of the young Italians that I mentioned, Chia, Cucchi, Clemente, Palladino, etc. And then you would have, in the 90s, gallery in the gallery show by Keith Haring, and that is when the event business really started, because Keith was during the opening painting this naked boy. After he also cleaned him, and the last show in that particular gallery was Anselm Kiefer's. This big airplane from lead is now in the collection of Erich Marx in the Hamburger Bahnhof. So, and then comes the cut. The gallery was over. I moved to Berlin as a free man, no longer a gallery, but still, of course, one time art, always art, you know. I mean, this is something you don't get out of your veins, I suppose. I was on the beach in the Canary Islands, in Tenerife, where I had a house, and I was reading in the newspaper in the museum in Weimar. Weimar is to Germany what Florence is to Italy, you know. In the former east of Germany, in the socialist part, the newspaper had an interview with the director, and he said 9 paintings by Lukas Kranach have been stolen. And not only have those paintings been stolen, but an entire century is missing, because first the Nazis took out everything from Bauhaus to, I mean, all modern. Then came the communists, they didn't do anything. At least nobody knows what contemporary art beyond our border looks like. And so I wrote him a letter. I said, I can't help you with a century, but of the last 30 years, I have a couple of good things. So we got together, and so in 1993, my collection, which I had never seen as a collection, but it was just things that stayed with me, and we can speak later about why they stay with the gallerist, sometimes even without having money. And it gave Weimar the reason to rebuild a very good building, one of the first buildings which were created as a museum in the 19th century. 19th century, and so this is the staircase of that museum. And of course, being a gallerist, I talked to my artists, and they were generous. Soluit gave as a gift the entire foyer. It's a huge space. Daniel Buren made this the hall. You see on the left his stripes, on the right is mirror. So that's the two Germanys. You know, one is the broken, one is the mirroring the other. I mean, that's That's unfortunately a very dark photo, but this black sculpture there is a Soluit. It was the last of his black sculptures, because until 65 they were black, not white. But it was, and it was the first modular sculpture, which is highly interesting. A Judd in the back, and the Flavin in the back, and there's even a little bit to see of the Andre there, so that was a space for minimal art. We can speak about the museum and the story later, because I want to avoid the red card anyway. So now my life is not within the white cube anymore. The collection partly belongs to the museum, partly it went back for about the reasons we will speak maybe. Just show you what the private surroundings of a collector looks like who had a gallery. Very, very, very different. Sorry, that's okay. That was Weimar. Next. Yeah, it's not a good photo, but anyway, that's in my home. The walls, the mirror walls, it's a mosaic mirror wall by John Armleder, which was done especially for this space. And the sound sculpture there, it's Sadhana Pfiff, a young artist who lives in Berlin, whom I appreciate a lot. And I think now we have the last picture, and that is my living room. And there is Giulio Paolini, the two Venus, the Mimesi it's called. Then there is a line of works by Giuseppe Pennone, and on the chimney, on the fireplace, you have a sculpture by Sylvie Fleury. And there in the back, you see Keith Haring, or you don't see it, and the lamp is by Mathieu Mercier. So that's about all for now.
Well, thank you so much. I think you raised very interesting issues here, like the idea of a gallerist. I mean, Helga was saying that there is something very nice about being a gallery, that you're always, well, the whole thing is setting up so you can see the works, the first to see the works. And then you were pointing out something, Paul, very interesting, how there is some works you don't sell because nobody really appreciates them, because nobody really has the eye to see them. And this is an anecdote by Leo Castelli. He had lots of Jasper Jones works because nobody understood them. So his collection was so interesting in that respect, because, I mean, this is not having an eye. So this is very interesting, how sometimes you keep the works nobody else understands, and that's why, you know, the gallery's collections are always so intriguing and so interesting. And Luise, let me get rid of that. Go back to talking galleries. There you go. Okay.
Yeah, also...
No. Unfortunately not.
No, it's not. This is not Luise.
No, I think you can for many years, having a gallery can for many years buy works for all kinds of reasons, but you don't consider it necessarily a collection. It's only when it turns public, all of a sudden it looks different even to you. And then you said, well, if someone... See, you don't get rid of me.
Okay. No. You have it ready as a loop, right?
A loop?
It's just a loop, or I can do it whatever.
No. Just no.
Doesn't matter.
No pongas pausa.
So as you see here, I start with a very empty space.
It begins like that.
No, but I started 25 years ago as a gallerist together with my partner. He was there with Taigu Zhang. But from these, we started in Copenhagen in '86, and then we opened in Beijing in 2007. And then a year ago, we finally decided to take a big step. So in September, a year from now, we are opening up the first space you saw. The images, let me start there. The images is a selection. Some of them are, this is from our space in Beijing, which we are keeping. And in 798. And as you see, this is Robert Rauschenberg, which was the inaugural show there. And in a second, when we get to the empty space, that is our new space in Copenhagen, which is at the harbor, and a storage room, totally empty at the time, but it's 1,500 square meters. Then in a year we'll open the foundation there. And the exhibitions we will be mounting will be yes. So I know the feeling, yeah. And it even had to be each of them had to be redone the Ai Weiwei because it had been exhibited outside. So each of them had been rusting. So we had to bind all of them. Anyway, no, but the place will be, the spaces will be open to the public and privately funded, but it will be, what we want to do is realize a dream. I think basically there is a collector in most gallerists, and this really is a dream coming true, to be able to focusing on two things: building up and developing a living collection of more and more contemporary art, but also at the same time, what really is a driver for me is to make new exhibitions, to create platforms that give to offer the artist a blank page, so to speak, and where they can produce new work. I mean, and we can be a part of the dialogue going on in the world on I mean, what is art doing to all of it? It really is a language of who are we as society, as individuals, and how do we develop, how do we interact, so on and so on and so on. I guess that's why we have all chosen this business, and so you could say it's this decision comes out of several things. Two main things. One being a reading of the changing structure as being a gallerist. I mean, having been doing it for 25 years, I think that right now we are in a time where the structures of our business is changing a lot. We have spoken a lot about the mega galleries. I do have a lot of respect for them, but I just choose deliberately to want to go in another direction. We've been discussing art fairs, who is a great meeting point and a great introduction, a great discussion point. But I just came to a point when it was, a mouse in a wheel running for the next, getting a new. Your concern went too much into finding a piece for the next fair instead of the exhibition. So even though we are not in any of the centers like New York or elsewhere, I felt the need of getting back more to the contemplating, as Klaus said yesterday, putting the pieces and the artist in relief. So that's really the reason why to do this. And so that's why we have chosen to focus more on collecting than selling in the future. And I have great admiration of those who've done it in a bigger scale. So I hope to take some small steps in that direction. But to give a good house for art and what to me is masterpieces at one hand, and at the other hand, make platforms where the artists can create new works. And to me, it's interesting to have my hometown, Scandinavia, Copenhagen, and Beijing, where I think a lot of new things is going on. And let me see if there's anything I forgot. I think the difference is, another thing we spoke about yesterday is all the very, very many hats and hands you need to have active in order to be a gallerist. And basically, most of the hands and the hats will be the same. I will just, in the future, show my commitment more by exhibiting and collecting rather than selling the artist works. And overall, I think what probably unites everybody in this room and in this profession is the passion. And I will end up inviting you all to Copenhagen in September next year, where Taigo Zhang is making the inaugural show with, I don't know exactly, he might choose some of the works from the collection, he might choose to make only new works, time will show, but hope to see you there.
Okay, thank you so much, Luise. I think you pointed out a couple of very important points, actually. One is a change in structure. I think this is Paul was talking about an age where fax didn't exist, internet didn't exist. And I think in that respect, China is a very interesting example again. Like, you know, Vitamin is a very good example of both private and public at the same time. And I think, you know, maybe we have to rework the whole thing, because it's not so. It's not. I mean, the actual old structure between public and private is much more open these days, and it should be reworked from many points of view, quite possibly. And then you said something that we can go back to later on too, that there is a kind of a collector in every gallerist. And why isn't there a collector in every museum director? That's an interesting point.
Well, that's for you to answer.
No, that's collected. We couldn't, Anne and myself couldn't find out. But that's interesting. Anyway,
I can tell you later.
Yeah, we'll go back to the question later. Thank you so much. Now, Boris, let's try to figure out where your PowerPoint is. It says Boris, I think. Oh, it's stuck in galleries. I think this time we'll get it right. Yes, we will. Okay, here we go. So.
Yes, I'm definitely the junior amongst you all here. I've only been working in the arts business for about 15 years with my family. But what I really share with them and with you all is the passion for art, and it's really the passion for art that I remember myself. My first connection with art was actually purchasing a piece also, and that kind of started my family's drive, and through becoming an antique dealer and dealing with contemporary art already then, being inspired by artists. And somehow my father, when he was 60 years old, he felt he needed to make an homage to that, where art and time could meet. That's why the exhibition was called Artempo in Palazzo Fortuny in Venice 07. And because, as you mentioned, Estrella, the link between the what's coming from the past and how the past can teach us about the future is an anchor to our collection. And this work we commissioned to Elena Tsu to open the space, and he just using bottle caps and actually waste. And from that waste, he made a whole village work and kind of distributing money for that and kind of returning, and that's how the alchemistic way, in a way, to make from waste or lead gold. And this was such a fascinating experience for us that somehow this exhibition became a trilogy. After this came Academia and Infinitum. You'll see images later. And then we kind of continued and felt that this needed a foundation to operate from, and that we are going to continue this engagement forever, and the foundation will behold the collection of the family. So sometimes, and actually I think all good initiatives in life come from some drive, and you just start doing them. And just some views from inside. The Buri and the Tapies also made from found objects, and created quite a controversy because we show them on these walls. You know, is it supposed to be in a white box or not? And this wall, in a way, is it became like this through what happened to it during time, and we believe that it helps to look at that with a different eye sometimes. Installation by Roman Opalka, who is a friend of the family for a long time, and we unfortunately lost him recently. But trying to grasp infinity here, counting all his life, to paint time and to paint infinity, and we would hear his voice here, and kind of like almost like a mantra where you hear him counting, and that's why he chose the monk to be accompanied by him. It's a monk from our collection from the 13th century. And so this was the Academia show in Paris. It's from then onwards we had decided that it would become a foundation, and this was in the Chapelle des Beaux-Arts, so it's part of the School of Beaux-Arts in Paris. All the important examples of history and how we create a dialogue there with artists from today, and in a way, to become an artist or to become you need to learn from the other masters, and it gave a very interesting dynamic also between my father and myself, because he being the master and me being the pupil, it also created a completely new dynamic, and it allowed me more freedom in a way also. It kind of evolved me to become more myself. Then became the new exhibition. The one after that is with these collections of Natura by Fontana, which, as we have all had the chance to own them at some point, but unfortunately no longer. But what's really this fundamental gesture, it's like this meteorite that falls from the sky, or the primitiveness of man to just make a ball of earth and make this simple gesture of slicing it. It's the coming close to the origin of the world, which of course never is achieved, and that's why it was a key moment to the Infinitum exhibition. And the work it was in relationship with a work by Kazuo Shiraga. Shiraga founded Gutai in Japan, and his relationship with Lucio Fontana was always fascinating us. And Fontana had seen him in Japan and invited him to participate in an exhibition in Milan in '59, which then subsequently changed that generation of artists that saw that exhibition so much. Actually, this is not. Wait, yeah. And then this is an image from the current exhibition, which is called Tra, Edge of Becoming. It's an exhibition that deals with the energy in between and the inspiration that comes from the east. It's the gateway, and in these images expressed by the Giacometti and the Michael Boremans, the energy in between the hands, or the weightless heaviness of this Anselmo picture, sculpture, or Günther Uecker, Schweben, which he made as an homage to the earthquake of Kobe.
Das ist im Moment in Fortuna.
Das ist im Moment in Fortuna, ja.
In Venezia.
And so this floor in the Fortuny we had kind of dedicated to Japan in the last exhibition, and of course with what happened in Fukushima right at when we were starting the exhibition, the artists that were invited to participate in the show were very moved by this, and this is why we kind of changed the program completely on this floor. And Günther Uecker dedicated this work to the victims of Fukushima. Kind of going back in history, this is where I'm born, and this is where my family started as collectors. My father never wanted to be a kind of a dealer with a shop, so he decided to live in his home, and in that little street, there were many artist studios that became friends for life. Haring and Walter Leblanc were living next door. Günter Uecker had a studio around the corner. So from this moment, they kind of all became friends, and it was really through the artists that my parents discovered contemporary art, and moving to Schavenwezel in the mid 80s, which dates back to the 1100, and having a place for the old and the new, always with the two Chinese sculptures. The on the right is the Tsung, is the symbol of earth, which is archaic Chinese, about 6,000 years old, and to the left is the symbol of heaven, and the fontana being this connection, this almost like a ladder between the earth and in search of the void. And of course, the living with art has always been key to us. And this is the library where my parents have always had their collection, and it changes and things get brought in, and we really love to live with it. And then kind of at this moment, I can kind of come more into the picture. We decided to go. I decided to work with my parents, and my parents invited me for that. And so we decided that the business needed some more growth, some more space, some more space for new activities. So we moved here in 1999. Actually, it is enough space. It becomes enough space. We're actually inviting more people to join us now. And because this building will also allow space for the public part of the collection of what we do. And so there is our collection of Vervoordt sculptures. These are all monks from the 8th century, bringing a message of peace. And so this is the plan for the foundation and the collection. But of course, not only for us. We will occupy the center, the three middle buildings. It's about 6,000 square meters. That will be the space for the foundation. But our company remains there, and we're inviting 100 families to join us around this and this adventure. And so, not only making, also making a dream happen. We love this. You're right, Luise. It's all about making a dream happen, and this is a really big dream for us. But it seems to start to happen. So that's what's really amazing. And we're actually starting the construction this month on this project. So we're building about 50,000 square meters, of which we will continue to own about 20,000 in the end. And central to this, so actually the little round building in the middle beholds this installation by Anish Kapoor, At the Edge of the World, and this quest for the void and this is really central to every work we have in the collection, and it's a great benchmark as well, I think. And so, but of course, this contextual thinking of always having the old and the new kind of made it difficult for us to continue to work with works from the studio. We were working with artists, and we would introduce collectors to artists and kind of working contemporary art like that. But it was impossible for us to show it to a wider public without having a space on its own. So we went back to its origin, the place where the little street in town, and this space was an old monastery from the 16th century, which we now dedicated to the gallery. It's a very small space. It's only 9 by 9 meters, and every 6 weeks we have another artist friend that shows there. And this is the opening exhibition with Günter Uecker, because he's a great friend, and we met him in this location. So and the Korean Bai Bien U contemplating the volcanoes.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, Boris. The
I-
red card is coming.
Okay.
Okay.
And I'm almost finished.
Okay.
And so Gotthard Graubner was the next, and then now kind of going back. I wanted to get to this image of this quest for infinity. I mean, hopefully we'll be able to continue a long time till death, of course, will tell us otherwise. But Romano Palka is the show that we had scheduled with him to celebrate his 80th, but he couldn't live the moment. So, thank you.
All right, thank you so much. I think space is never enough, for one thing. I mean, the bigger it gets, the more you need, right? So, but it's really impressive. I mean, the whole project, not only the space devoted to the actual showing the works, but, you know, the whole project, how they're going to, I mean, people are going to live there, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And, you know, the idea of the old and the new. But I would like to, I mean, this is something very intriguing for me. As I said before, I'm a kind of an outsider. And but I get the impression from all your different points of view that you became a collector without really having had the intention of becoming a collector, that you sort of became a collector just by the fact that you were so close to art. And this is something that would be interesting for me to hear. And then how did you realize you were a collector? You had become a collector if it was not a conscious kind of decision, okay? Because I suppose some of your clients go to the gallery and they know they're collectors, and you have to help them sometimes to make a decision, or you have to guide them, etc. But I mean, they know they're collectors. They know exactly what they want to buy because they have something precise in mind. But I have the impression from what you said that in mostly in your cases it just happened, okay? So maybe that could be an idea that we could start the discussion from. Helga, would you like to start?
It always just happened. For me, it's nothing planned, never. I see a thing, I get in love with it, and then I have to buy it. It's my way to do it. I did that with everything, I mean, with people also.
And when do you realize you're a collector? Because now you know you're a collector, right?
Yes,
you would
I
accept
started
it.
in 1967.
Okay.
With my husband, we bought them. We were friends of artists from Cuenca and things like that, you know. And then we know Juana Mordo, and I was like everybody. I bought awful things. But then you have to, you know, that one day in Basel, a long time ago, a friend of mine who was near my booth, Juana Mordo, she already died. It was, I think, in 1985 or something like that. He said to me, sit down. If you bring another time, the shit you brought to Köln, to Colonia, we throw you out the fair. That was the best thing that could happen to me. Because for me, everything who was at the Galerie Juana Mordo was just the best thing could be. And I didn't look further and didn't see. And I didn't sleep in all that night, you can imagine. And then I was furious. The next day I said, you are my friend. Tell me why. Tell me what. And he said, look, in every house, from time to time, you have to clean. Begin cleaning the gallery. There is a lot of dust. That was so important for me. You cannot imagine, for all my life. And I began to clean.
Yeah, that's a very interesting story. And what about yourself, Paul?
Well, I mean, it was about this new type of gallery in around 1970, which is today, it seems normal, but it wasn't normal then, because before the art dealer would visit the studio of an artist and they'd say, this, that, not, this, that, not. These are the 7 paintings I'm going to show, and I give you a show. And at the late 60s, it turned the other way around. The artist came, the ticket was paid, and that was about it.
Yeah.
And the gallery became like a studio, but also mentally like a studio, and you became the partner, the creative partner of that particular artist. And if you had the feeling that the symbiosis worked, you would stay together until maybe sometimes with these young Italians that I mentioned, someone else came and said, this check is bigger. You know, and then of course you better split and part. But with many successful artists that never happened. But then when it comes to buying, it was, you know, some of the best things which I have, it's because I wasn't able to sell them.
Yeah.
They stayed there for a year, and then came a point where I said, this piece is so important, I buy it, and it's out of the market. Or then you would have a young artist like Hans-Peter Feldmann. The work was like 5 marks. It's 2 euros a piece, or maybe 20 if it was something big. And I thought, well, it's a shame, you know. I buy it everything. And now, of course, when he has a show at the museum, do I have time for a little story?
Yeah, sure. We'd love to hear your story.
Hans-Peter Feldmann gave a show to the Hamburger Bahnhof Nationalgalerie Berlin, and offered them at a very low price this entire big show. It's like a retrospective. You have to know that Feldmann never produces unique pieces, but not even editions. You know, when he feels like it, he does it, or does it again, or he does not. So, and they couldn't make their mind up, and they had the money, but they thought maybe we go to the next art fair, see something else, and so. And then I thought, I blackmailed them. I said, if you buy this show, I give you as a present the same quantity of the same artist. And now they are proud to have the biggest and most complete Feldmann collection in the world, you know. Or, for instance, now coming to donating and giving, there's another story, just to show you how different it can be. Now the Städel Museum in Frankfurt, which is a highly important European museum, mainly for painting, they are now creating a huge space underground for art after 1945. And when I saw the model with all the little pictures already glued down, some of the artists which I really appreciate and of whom I happen to have works, they had, let's say, poor, I don't want to say lousy, but they didn't really have what belongs into that kind of museum, into that kind of level. So I said, if you want, I make you a list of things that you can have from me, either as a gift or as a permanent loan. There's only one condition, you have to hang it, because storage I have myself.
No,
you know.
right.
And so that's how collaborations start. Or then when I inherited the estate of an artist, all the archive I gave to a museum because I have to take care of it, you know, beyond my own time, because it's cultural things. But then we already come to another subject: what happens to the collection eventually, you know, because you don't live forever. But it's really the collection was not a collection; it was just a possession. And then when this moment with Weimar came to that it would turn public, you look at it in a totally different way. Because as a private person, I can hang the painting horizontally, you know, because the wall doesn't permit it vertically. But as soon as it gets public, you have to be very precise, and you have a responsibility.
That's a wonderful story about a private collection becoming public in Bouvard-et-Pécuchet, by Flaubert, because they have a small collection, and when they make it public and they show it to everybody in their small village. Everybody says, "Oh, what is this? This is junk," next to something which is valuable. And you know, the idea that confronting the collection, I suppose, is a very important moment in our collections, and we can go back to that later, maybe.
Yeah, you turn into a curator. A curator, and if you have then in that public situation good partners, you can let it go. In most cases, you don't have good partners. Like Klaas said it yesterday, museum people tend to be lazy. Not the few that we all know. They are fantastic. But then, I mean, that's another story. And I don't want to go back to Weimar, but that's actually the story, yeah, because to work with art means a lot of work. You can't work a little bit and feel good. You have to really be behind it. So this turning from when you have a gallery and you have works of art, you are not private. It's always, I mean, you have the system in mind and the context in mind, and you have the network in mind. But when it goes public, all of a sudden there's an enormous distance between you and the work, I always thought, you know, and so. Yeah,
that's a very interesting issue. Maybe we could all go back to later. But Luise, you said something. I said, well, I don't want to keep on showing. I want to, selling. I want to show now. from now on I want to show more than sell. So
I
how did you...
think it has been a wish basically from the beginning, but I mean, I started without a dime and I was 20 years old, so the first many years, for two reasons, I had to sell the art pieces. Primarily because that's your job as a gallery. For the artist, you need to try to place the works in the best possible collections, and you also had to pay the bills. So I have tried mostly from the beginning to collect some things from the exhibitions our own exhibition. It wasn't always possible, but it's primarily the last 10 years where I more deliberately started collecting. It really has to do also with being able to do it. So, the wish has been there all the time, and I think Beiler is the best possible example we could have. He kept all the best pieces himself.
Yeah, I think so. And the idea that, well, we'll go back to when a collection is ready. We'll go back to that. When a collection is ready to become public. This is something that interests me a lot. But maybe Boris would like to. He told us a bit about the story of becoming a collector. It's more like a family business too, right? So you probably got there through different stories.
Absolutely, and as dealers, and as a foundation in Extreme, we really want to open people's eyes to different ways of collecting and different ways to share passion for the arts, and that's really the main drive. And I actually don't think it's. I also like to be personally. I like to be a dealer. It's really my father who's much more involved with the foundation, and I enjoy placing work in great collections, but I couldn't imagine not having an artist in our own in our family collection if we were to represent them in the gallery. It kind of always starts there. That's that kind of love that Helga was describing. It's almost always starts with first purchasing something for ourselves, and then the relationship starts to build, and then we represent them in the gallery.
Yeah, that brings a question for me. Do you still have a few minutes? Just a few minutes. We're four of. I have to defend our timetable. It's 4 instead of 3. No, just briefly, because you said something very interesting there, and the idea of having you wouldn't have in your gallery an artist you wouldn't have in your collection. Basically, it's part. It's part of what you love. And
Absolutely.
What if the conflict comes? What if you have a piece you really love and one of your collectors really loves that piece too? Who wins in that conflict that I said sometimes it may happen actually?
The better collector has to win. Because that's your responsibility towards the artist.
That's what I wanted to
I
hear.
would not refuse the Museum of Modern Art a piece just because I love it.
Yeah.
Okay.
But it doesn't happen so often.
Okay. Well, lucky you.
No.
And what about you?
I can't agree more. I think it's the art that primes, and some collections are better ambassadors for the work.
And when do you... I'm sorry, Luise.
No, but we are. I just had the last exhibition with a sales list, so I'm basically avoiding the problem in the future.
Okay.
What do you mean, a sales list?
No, but I won't be running a commercial gallery anymore.
Sure.
So that makes things a bit easier if you want to keep the works. Good. And when do you think, do you have an idea of when a collection is ready to become public? Because, you don't know how you got there. You, little by little, you become collectors because sometimes you keep the works, because sometimes you love the works. You always love the works, as a matter of fact. But then at some point, you need that to be seen by everybody. You spoke about storage. Having your works in storage at a museum, you prefer to have them storage at your own storage, right?
Yeah, it's a funny feeling when you think you have a work of art which you think has... I'm not talking about liking, loving, finding so wonderful. What you think is really significant, because it represents a moment of thinking and of creation in our era. Then it's a funny feeling that you think you have not seen it for 20 years. It's in bubble foil in the storage, and like in my case, I'm not sure whether I will see it ever again, and that's a strange feeling. But I mean, there are two things. One thing is if you incorporate works from your collection into a museum collection as a donation, or if you create your own museum, your own space with your, I mean, where you do your own donation, that depends on various things. One thing is money. Like I could, in Berlin, we have a couple of private collectors who have set up their private public spaces, but I would not be able to, I've flirted with the idea for a moment, but I cannot entertain the idea seriously because in order to keep the presentation going and make it really interesting for more than 2 months, I would have to invest so much money. I would not so much money. I would have to invest money which I don't have. So in other words, I would depend on a partnership with a public collection, and that depends, like we have heard in these 2 days so often, on the person, you know. And you cannot make someone happy against his will.
Too true, yeah. And what about you, Helga?
For me, one day it was too big. I didn't want to do it that. I went all over Spain. I was in several towns and asked there. And everybody wanted to give me a building, but I had to arrange it myself. And I said, no. Somebody else has to do just the cover. I don't need Sarah Hadid or, I don't know, Frank Gehry, but a cover. Well, I found 2 wonderful young architects, and they are doing it now. And it's making the Spanish government. It's coming money from Europe. I hope they will use that money. I don't know, because in Spain we don't have a lot of money just now. So, but I think it will go on. So they're going to finish it.
No, maybe we could just say, and we'll open the questions to the audience immediately, I promise, that there is a change, there's a transformation in the field. I mean, let's say the older generation has some difficulties that, you know, the younger generation has overcome to a certain extent, or at least there are different solutions that, you know, in those times were really John Baldessari was like an unknown. Well, it happens today too. But I think probably the whole system is going through transformation, and probably it's only, let's hope for the better to a certain extent. I mean, we're probably becoming more business oriented, but on the other hand, maybe we have different solutions that we couldn't find in the old times. Maybe that's so. And I promise, right now, I will open the questions to the audience. There's somebody over there at the end. I know it's been a long morning. It's I suppose for everybody's very tired.
Hola. Hola, me llamo Marina Romero. Si me permiten, me gustaría hablar en castellano. En primer lugar, enhorabuena por el trabajo que realizan y que llevan realizando tantos años. Son un referente para las nuevas generaciones que estamos empezando. Y mi pregunta es por un comentario que se ha hecho al principio que me ha llamado mucho la atención, y era en relación a cuando un galerista monta una exposición de un artista, pues imagino un artista en el que cree, en el que ve que tiene posibilidades, que es un buen artista, y sin embargo esa exposición se le cae y no vende ni una sola obra. Entonces el galerista decide comprar una pieza, ¿no? Eso entiendo que se habla al principio. Esa decisión por parte del galerista, a lo mejor la pregunta es un poco indiscreta, pero...
Es que tú crees en el artista y los
claro,
artistas tienen que vivir.
Es por eso, lo hacen para motivar al artista, para que el artista realmente piense que no es que sea un desastre, sino que es un buen artista y que debe seguir trabajando. Lo hacen un poco para dar ejemplo al resto de coleccionistas.
Yo no trabajo con nadie de la familia, ni con amigos, ni con nada de eso. sino solo con artistas que yo creo que me gustaría tener en mi propia colección. Porque si no, acabas mal. Peleado con la familia, con los primos. Es decir, que es así. Claro. Everybody has somebody who is
Hopefully.
painting or making photos or something.
No.
In the family, I mean.
No, it's a merciless field. I mean, you wouldn't build a bridge unless you're sure that the engineer knows how to do it, you know, because otherwise you'll drop.
Okay, I'm afraid we have just 5 minutes left because Boris has to go to the airport. So I told you he's on planes all the time. We have to hands. I mean, because there's already two questions here. So would you like to?
It's very interesting, this talk, and about my experience. I was a collector too. And I stopped a little bit to collect because I was a little bit like Helga, always to try to find the best piece, and on the end was quite impossible. So I didn't have the chance to make the excellence of the collection. So I decided to stop to collect. And the question is that every collector, I don't talk about myself, but for everybody, they think they have the best collection. And every collector, no, I don't talk about you. You can imagine a person who going to collect, he don't collect things that he think is not good. So you can imagine that everybody buy art in thinking that he do the best collection. And when you have the best collection, then you have a lot of work, and then you have to start to think what you're going to do with this work. And then is starting the nightmare, because the nightmare it's I don't have any children because my statute don't give me the chance to have children. So my work is not going to go in my héritier. And the museum director, like you say, Paul, they need a lot of time to understand that maybe a collection can be good. And now with the development of the market, so many collectors, what is interesting to know what is going to be with all these collectors who think they have the best collection and maybe it's not the best collection. What is going to happen with all this art? So you can understand it's nothing to do with your collection, but it's to do with this mega market who start, I saw, for example, in Miami, so many warehouses. What is going to be with all this, art? What do you think about?
Well, it will be a whole series of suicides eventually, you know. No, but it's a very serious question. Certainly the collections, thousands maybe, who are considered to be very important, are not so important. Time will show, and I think there's a certain modesty necessary. When I see some American collectors walk around in Basel, it gives me the creeps. You know, I mean, it's a mixture of greed, of envy, of. Give you just one example. I had just in my old days sold in Basel a painting by an artist. 5 minutes to an American collector, a woman, and then came another American woman and said, "I know Kathy has just bought that painting. Have you got something, but just a bit bigger?" You know, and she considers herself a serious collector. You know, I mean, but then there's, of course, one thing we all know, it needs time. And time tells also, it tells you whether you've been so right or not so right. It's actually like all the subjects that you deal with here in this conferences, it's an endless subject. I could bring in now the subject of tax in Germany when you have a private collection. That's another story, you know, which can be killing.
Very difficult all over the world, I suppose.
And so on, you know. I mean, it's really many aspects. And we always talk about love and getting excited. No, they're very, very practical issues.
Details,
once you own it. It's like having a child. You know, the child gives you 90% of trouble. and 10% of pleasure. And then you still don't know what's going to, what is
What's
coming
going
out
to
of it.
happen? Yeah, I know. Luise, you wanted to say something?
I just wanted to say that some of it probably should stay in the warehouses because it's, as you mentioned, the individual collector might think it has a bigger place than the general audience, but at the other hand, it could be a way out of hopefully those who have had the good eyes and did collect could also support some of the institutions that haven't had a chance to follow through.
Yeah, and we should not so easily talk about collections. It's just a number of works, good ones, not so good ones, many and not so many. Collection has become like a profession. I mean, if when you ask, what is this man? He's a collector. It's like he's a carpenter or he is you know, it's, I mean, it's nice to own works of art and maybe sometimes that's as good, it's as much as that, you know. So let's not overrate collectors. I mean, there are art lovers, art owners. It's a long way to a collection. Yeah.
Just one more question. Anne was the first.
Yeah.
Aki.
Actually, I feel I should give my question away to the other lady because I might have the opportunity to ask it in private.
Okay,
so.
just go ahead.
Voy a aprovechar a hablar en español. Soy Sarit Lichtenstein, mexicana, y tengo mi galería en Frankfurt. Soy también artista. Y les quiero agradecer su sinceridad y todas sus historias y compartir con nosotros su vida y el amor por el arte. Y una pregunta a Boris, ¿dónde estás haciendo la fundación?
Yes, I should have said that. That's a good point. It's outside Antwerp, near Belgium. In Belgium, I mean.
Where outside?
Yes, it's
Well,
it's quite in the middle of nowhere. But
In Wolfsburg.
Okay. Well, I think Anne can go ahead. That was a short question, so we have 3 more minutes. Okay. Thank you.
I had a question that is not a very intelligent one, but a very practical one. I wonder, Helga sort of hinted at it in her presentation. How do you acquire works of art as a gallerist if they don't come from your own gallery practice? If it's not how Paul explained that you see the value of a work, you hold on to it, and then you suddenly... How do you acquire outside of your own gallery practice?
I don't understand you.
Well, you said that you would walk around art fairs and see work that you would like to buy, but that there would be kind of a problem of trust and confidence from the galleries where you wanted to buy because they have a distrust that you might put it into the second market.
Yeah, that was a very big thing. It was during several years. Now I don't have any more, and people know me. When I buy a thing, they know that's going to Cáceres, to Spain.
Yeah, last ARCO, when I went to a young gallery's booth and I asked about the painting, he said, Helga has bought it. It was like a quality stamp. So there comes a point, you know, when, on the other hand, I mean, this morning we had the conversation. I've been to Basel maybe 2 years ago, and in 3 booths of big galleries, you know, American or British, they would not, they didn't know me. And even if they had known me, it would have been the same. They would not even give me the price. You know, it's like, you know, this kind of thing. And that, of course, does turn you down, like Pierre explained, because you kind of feel insulted because, excuse me, but some stupid idiot is coming with $1 million. And even if I would have to get the money to gather that $1 million, and would put it in a context where the work really belongs, you really feel disillusioned, you know. I mean, I don't want to go into that too much further, but I think when you go to, if you want to buy something as a collector, as a dealer even, and if you're a good dealer, it should not, in generally not be so difficult, especially if it's young art, you know, because later we're not talking about art, we're talking about money.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I think now is a big red card, right? We should be finishing. One more? Yes? Last one, okay.
I want just to say we have the experience now with the Ullens Foundation that I always say to Mr. Ullens to open a museum is very expensive, and we have to consider it that the collector is first somebody who is passionate to buy art, and to set up a museum is very complicated. And I know because I had restaurants, hotels, and things like this. So when I was collector, I proposed my collection to the city of Geneva, and they didn't want it. And the director of the museum said, "Pierre, build your own museum." And I say to him, "Listen, I own already restaurants, hotels, etc. I don't want to own a museum, because my passion is buying art, and to rent a museum is a nightmare." So this is something that the collector have in trouble to have this passion of collecting, and then to know, even you have a very good collection, to go ahead so strongly until you find, like Helga say, a place to put this collection. And I think this is something that we have, and Paul, you have the same problem maybe, and Yvan Lambert the same. It's the people who take this collection, they don't know how much passion, energy, feeling, and everything we put in this is a lifetime work to finish on the end in a storage.
But sometimes the states are building, in most of the buildings of the museum, they begin at the upstairs, as we say, con el tejado, because they don't have any collection. And then they make a collection in 2 years. Then you can imagine what they collect, no? And there's a lot of museums like that.
And this is why the auction houses will live forever.
Yeah.
Yeah, right, of course.
Well, I think this is, trying to understand, as an art historian, why a museum wouldn't like a very good collection, and trying to understand why there are empty museums and orphan collections, and not trying to put them together. That would be very good, and very, very good even economically. We could end the round table. I really thank you so much. I had a very good time with all of you, and I thank you because I learned a lot. And I still have lots of questions, but I can ask them later. Okay, thank you so much.